Let's welcome up to the stage David Wood, who is the CEO of Yumbah.
Just wait for the slides to come through. Okay. Good afternoon. Before tackling today's topic, let me perhaps introduce Yumbah for those that are less familiar with our business. We are a privately owned Australian company that runs a diversified shellfish aquaculture portfolio. So what we're seeking to do is develop an investment-grade portfolio designed to provide resilience and quality in earnings by spreading risk and opportunity across three realms. The first of these is the species, where we farm abalone, oysters and mussels. The second is location, with farms spread across Southeast Australia. And the third is along the value chain, where we're not only selling to consumer markets, but we're also selling to grow-out farmers with our oyster spat. The theme of the conference, Sustainable Growth Through Cycles, resonates with us as a business. We are executing a growth strategy, and we have effectively doubled our enterprise value to about $130 million over the last 2 years, with a strategic ambition of doubling it again in the next 3 years. So to the topic, sustainable growth through the cycles. I don't claim to know how to actually navigate a supertanker, but I do feel some empathy for those that do. To put that into context, it's necessary to consider the inherent characteristics of the industry in which we are operating and what it takes to navigate a growth strategy. Our business is capital intensive. Yumbah itself operates on a physical capital intensity ratio of $2.05 of capital per dollar of revenue. This reflects both the long infrastructure required to farm fish and the biological growth cycle, with abalone taking 3 years to grow, oysters 2 years and mussels 1 year. For Yumbah, because we are growing, we are investing ahead of returns, and that's why that ratio is high. The capital cycle for expansion means that we're building and stocking and thus adding a further 1 to 2 years onto that biological growth cycle. So navigating growth in this environment is perhaps similar to navigating that supertanker at sea. It's not easy to pivot quickly, and like the skipper and navigators and engineers on the bridge, we need to continually be looking ahead towards our destination. So the equivalent tanker length for us is a 5-year planning cycle. We also need to be looking around us for potential hazards to ensure that we remain on course. So when we're navigating growth, there are 2 key elements that must guide the business. The first of these is having a clear business strategy and the disciplines to execute. And the second is a perspective of what will drive value in the longer term, which is best considered within the ESG context. So I'll go through those in a bit more detail. Yumbah has a clear strategy of growth, and we believe that we can continue to execute that and become Australia's leading shellfish aquaculture company. Our growth we see as being delivered through 4 pillars. The first of these is that we will continue to develop the portfolio. And from a farming perspective, this requires continuing to focus on our organic performance by looking at our fish performance initiatives, building out our existing asset capacity, and looking at complementary acquisitions. The second pillar is that we recognise that with the changing market expectation and trends, we will need to continue to invest in our production capability to deliver market-relevant products. Thirdly, to ensure that we are market-led, we will continue to drive an expansion of our markets, using data to guide where and how we develop and deploy our sales capability. And finally, we see partnerships as a key way to build mutual business value and unlock economies of scale and scope in what is a capital-intensive industry. In driving these growth pillars, there are key operational imperatives that our team must focus on, and if we are successful, then it creates a virtuous cycle of continued and sustainable growth. Over the last couple of years, Yumbah has grown its business with a clear strategy of building this investment-grade portfolio. The map shows the profile with farming across 3 states. We have Pacific oysters in South Australia and Tasmania, abalone across Victoria, Tasmania and South Australia, and mussels in Port Lincoln, South Australia, and also here in Victoria. Additionally, we have the investment in East 33, which provides us with access to the important Sydney rock oyster industry. As we've grown the portfolio, we've been deliberate in our expectations around revenue and return resilience, setting targets for minimum contributions from each species, as well as the geographic spread to mitigate against individual species risk. The goal is to ensure our business, whilst not immune from the cyclical risks, is better positioned to withstand them and support our ongoing growth. The portfolio we have built is providing the revenue and return balance and the production spread as the chart shows. This has been driven by building on that fish performance management that I spoke of and driving the balance by considered development and acquisition investment. We're targeting a 15% return on funds employed, which is also tracking in our medium-term plans, but it is impacted by the fact that we are investing in growth and the returns are linked to the longer capital cycles that we are executing. So our business strategy and execution focus guide the direction we are heading. However, we also need to grow with an awareness of the broader context around us. Sustainability is a word that is used widely, so it's important that we actually define it. At Yumbah, we view sustainability as farming for future generations and not just for today. This requires us to work respectfully with our environment in which we farm, the communities in which we work, and with an appropriate governance framework to ensure we do what we say we're going to do. But why is that important? In 2015, 196 countries signed the Paris Agreement to limit the increase in water temperatures to 1.5 degrees above the pre-industrial levels. In December 2023, COP28, the 28th session of the Conference of Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, met in Dubai to perform a temperature check on this transition away from fossil fuels. This global stocktake resulted in a pledge on food and agriculture by nearly 160 countries, recognising that food production is responsible for about a third of the total carbon emission. The inevitable conclusion is that these pledges of the 160 countries have made will be reflected in the future balance sheets of most food producers as mandatory costs that will be highly regulated. So, aquaculture and the blue economy have a head start in helping contain that sea temperature increase. For us, rising sea temperatures is one of our biggest threats. So we're uniquely aligned to that goal of maintaining the increase to below that 1.5 degrees. As part of the blue economy, Yumbah has a number of blue advantages that enable us to farm for those future generations. Firstly, our natural capital is scalable. We leverage the incredible productivity of molluscan reproduction. I'm sure not many of you here in the room know that one abalone alone can produce 10 million eggs each spawn. Related to this is our closed-loop farming with domesticated broodstock, which means that we can provide food security without having to go back into the wild to further draw on declining resources. We also have the lightest carbon touch of any food producer. Oysters and mussels need no feed, and as filter feeders, purify the waters in which they grow. In shellfish aquaculture, we are carbon removers. The shells of our shellfish actually sequester carbon permanently. As part of the aquaculture industry, we believe our business complements to sustaining populations in the wild fisheries. We can coexist and reduce the pressures on the wild fisheries to produce all the food that we need to consume. But significantly at Yumbah, we also have the potential to reseed the wild fisheries and hence contribute to regenerative aquaculture. So, notwithstanding the importance of the COP28 tasks and the blue advantages Yumbah has, it is worth considering the balance sheet impact of the pledge changes. If all food must meet the COP28 pledges, then many producers will need to incur the new expenses of doing so. Yumbah has many areas to work on. We're very early in our transition to renewable energy, with the current rollout of solar across our farms expected to provide approximately 30% of our total energy needs. And we continue to look at alternate diet formulations to reduce the drain of fish meal and oil. But we do have the blue advantages, and our sites and operations are scalable, enabling us to continue to execute a growth strategy. Even in the blue economy, there is competition for natural capital allocation, with the number of existing sites suitable for farming being limited and the development of new sites challenging. So our ability to scale with development sites is a key advantage for the business. Spatial planning is a challenge for the blue economy and an area that government needs to support if we are going to secure our food future. The return from our blue economy balance sheet is that we can continue to provide high quality products today and for future generations. Our blue economy balance sheet is growing along with the broader aquaculture sector so that it now outproduces the wild catch sector. In Australia, we are seeing international investors who understand patient capital and the strategic importance of the blue economy assets being far more active investing in aquaculture than what local investors are. We've seen this in the fact that the salmon industry is now all foreign owned. We should seek answers as to why this is. Is it a factor of the capital markets and the short-term return demands? Or is it an educational lens required to elevate the importance of the blue economy and aquaculture to our future food security? Irrespective, at Yumbah, we will focus on building our blue economy balance sheet, recognising that it is critical to our farming for future generations. So, Yumbah, like all businesses, must work through the impacts of business cycles. Our ability to do this is derived from a clear growth strategy, a focus on execution, and leveraging those blue advantages. All of this is bound by a passion and a focus on delivering a quality seafood product that is sustainably produced. And if you haven't already tried our products, please do so, as that is the surest way that Yumbah will continue to sustain growth through the cycles. Thank you.
Terrific, David. Clearly, Yumbah's very advanced in terms of its evolution down the sustainability track, particularly around establishing KPIs as well. So well done. We've got time for perhaps one or two questions from the floor before our next speaker, if anyone has a question for David.
Just one that we hear from the institutional market is tassels vanish from the exchange. We've had Huon vanish from the exchange. So we've got Clean Seas speaking near, which is great. But what is the future for aquaculture, and how are we going to fund the next phase if we're not on the ASX?
Look, it's a challenging question, Paul, and perhaps one that you're better qualified to answer than me. But I think the reality is that, until we actually get the investment markets to understand the importance of food security and the longer-term value proposition, then we're not going to realise the true value of the assets that we have. Yumbah is fortunate. We've got an established business that has been operating for 25 years. To try and go and find those locations and start it up today would be impossible. And I think it's that value that we need the markets to realise, whether it's listed or private investment.
You've got a good career in politics coming up as well, Dave. That's a very, very good answer. Any other quick questions?
Fantastic presentation. Thanks a lot. Really appreciated it. Throughout the day, we've had very few dots on the west side of those maps that have been going up. Do you have any perspectives on the potential for aquaculture in that part of the country? Thanks.
In Western Australia? There is certainly aquaculture going on in the west. There's barramundi farming up north near Broome. Harvest Road are obviously heavily involved in the oyster industry in the west. Currently, Yumbah and Rare Foods Australia have been exploring establishing an abalone farm down in Esperance. The economics don't make sense at the moment, but we're working with the state government in WA to see if there's potential to create an aquaculture hub down there. So, Australia has the natural advantage. We're surrounded by water. It's great quality water for growing fish. Hopefully we see all parts of the country continue to grow, including the west.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you, David. Please join me, everyone, in thanking David for his presentation.